Hi there, my name is Liam Huggins. This is my response to Tyler Gary's video on why the U.S. should have not withdrawn militarily from Afghanistan. Prefacing the speech that's about to be had, I just want to say that up front, I appreciate Gary's perspective, what he had to add to this debate. He provides some loose ideas for alternatives and kind of goes through a series of ideas. So I will be responding in a similar way, just going kind of point by point as Gary laid out in his own video. Now, with that being said, let's get right into it. Gary starts off his debate talking and refuting the idea that, as Biden said, that this is the end of the era, that there is still a major military presence within the Middle East, and that this doesn't really change our foreign policy. In a sense, yes, the larger picture as it stands currently is not done with yet, but I would like to state the importance of the withdrawal of Afghanistan as it states not just in the United States but globally what the United States is doing in its foreign policy, which, as I said in my own video defending the withdrawal, is that we're shifting from non-state actors and this sort of nation-building attempts in the Middle East in a post 9/11 sort of world into refocusing on foreign policy threats via state actors, mainly Russia and China. So in that sense, I do think this is somewhat emblematic of a new era of U.S. foreign policy. Nextly, Tyler brings up the Trump negotiated Doha deal with the Taliban regarding the withdrawal of troops that sort of prefaced Biden's own withdrawal of the troops in 2021. I, in a certain way, agree that there should have been more work done within these negotiations. Tyler later on talks about the faulty intelligence that led to a false conclusion of what was going to happen with the withdrawal, and I also agree that the intelligence led the Biden administration in a wrong way, and that a withdrawal proposal struck up with the Taliban could have been more thorough, give a longer time frame, and could have solved for some of the issues that Tyler is going to mention later on in the speech. Before we get to that, just going down next on the list here, Tyler discusses advocating for a middle ground with working both with the Ghana government and the Taliban government. I don't think that this is really plausible, this sort of middle ground. I think that that historically what we saw was the Afghani government was incapable of holding control, holding power, and pushing its military forces against the Taliban. And that even after attempts to nation build and to army surge, mainly with Obama in 2009, that we saw a sort of failure to start with the Afghani government. And I don't think that that would have changed with more years and more funding, within Afghanistan. Next, Tyler makes a point that I frankly will agree with, is that the Taliban has since taking over Kabul, and maintaining its dominance within the region, within Afghanistan, that it does largely maintain its control with fear and terror. What I do want to push back on is the idea that this is going to allow the region to be a place to foster terrorism and other sorts of extremism. I think that the Taliban government has, from the outset, really strongly opposed the localized ISIS terrorist group within the region. Now, to comment on whether they are effective or whether their tactics, which have been reportedly been fairly brutal and oppressive, are going to effectively crumble this and maintain their control of the region, I think is another question. but I think that it's very likely that the Taliban will take a hardline approach against terrorist groups within the region, unlike how Tyler says, which seems to purport that the Taliban government in Afghanistan will have a more laissez-faire with other extremist groups, like how it was before the 2001 invasion operation. I believe it was Everlasting Freedom. I don't think that we have the same Taliban government like we did in '01. I think the one that we have here is uniquely different, and it has learned from some of those mistakes that caused the war 20 years ago to start. Another important point to push back on from Tyler is the idea that this poorly impacts our image globally, right? It was a shame to see some of the refugees who struggled and perhaps lost their lives in their attempt to escape and flee the country under, what is a very real threat of Taliban retaliation, or the unfortunate loss of military members in the withdrawal process. But I think actually this withdrawal will actually have positive effects globally for us. As I said in my own video, that there is a clear message that's being sent out here that the United States is reprioritizing its strategic goals globally, and that is focusing on the expanding powers of Russia and China. And for NATO countries, for Southeast Asian countries, our ability to not be bogged down in Afghanistan and to be present and to be able to provide resources and engagement within these regions to maintain a sense of control against what are going to be expanding powers like Russia and China is really important for a global image. And I think the withdrawal of Afghanistan lends to that idea that we're going to be more present in other parts of the country. Lastly, another big issue for Tyler is obviously the obvious humanitarian crisis. I think this issue is a little beyond the withdrawal of the troops. In my mind, this is inevitable. You withdraw them now, you withdraw them 5 years, 10 years from now. I do believe the Taliban take over, and then we are back within this discussion. But when discussing the humanitarian crisis, how do we secure the rights for women, for children, for marginalized religious groups who might be targeted by the Taliban? I think that's where our carrot and stick approach within the region becomes important. It becomes important how the United States will designate potential aid within the region, how it will limit its economic opportunities via, what would be embargoes and other sorts of controls. That's really where I believe the Biden administration is going to have to pay important control, because the Taliban is now a state actor. They are going to have to act somewhat rationally within organizing the government, and I think that's our opportunity to perhaps fix or to provide a better alternative than perhaps a lot of people see currently for the Afghan government and the Taliban control of it. Well, that is really all I have for this debate. Thank you all for hearing it out. Thank you once again for Tyler Gary's input and his side of the debate. Once again, my name is Liam Huggins, here for POS 361 U.S. Foreign Policy. Thank you.